Coach Captain's Log, November 21st, 2019, 7:25 p.m. Salutations, Bravehearts, Urbanites, and Coach Mad Hatters, and welcome to the Stardome's HangSuite. It is such a delight to share this time and space with you. I am your host, CoachT'Marie Wiggins, founder of the Coach Mad Hatters, the MMM and PJs, and the I Crimson Velvet VIPs. During this hang suite, I'll be serving as your EQ tour guide. And EQ stands for Emotional Intelligence. We're going to use what we know through the EQ bridge building to balance our intellect. What we're trying to do is gain a wholesome awareness around self. And self is capital S, capital E, capital L, capital F, which stands for Sacred / Sankofa Energy Life Force. There's a lot going on inside the world of emotional intelligence. One of those things is the uncommon sense of parental principles. The ways to parenting is not anywhere close to what is considered common sense. Yes, we have traditions that are familiar to one another, um, with barriers of varying cultural denominations and certain mixtures and actually beautiful blends of contemporary cultural denominations. But one thing remains the same: our efforts to raise our children. Now, not the techniques per se, because I think that they are evolving overall. We are gaining more unique approaches to the way we relate to our children, but it's still kind of whack. The 21st century youngsters are pissed the fuck off, and rightfully so. I want to say about 90% of it, honestly. And so the parenting dynamics has always been such a touchy subject for me. I spent half of my life judging my parents, and the other half, or the extended version, seeing as that I have officially crossed the middle-aged mark. So from that moment till now, judging myself as a parent. And I honestly have to say, neither sets of report cards are all that good. And so being down, like in the valley, emotionally in the valley, like what would be considered and I'm looking for my Shiro Hero's Journey. I'm looking for my notes so that I can give the proper reference. So, the dark night of the soul, which I like to say, the dark soul of the night, um, mainly in honorarium of Saturn and the root chakra and what actually goes into authentic, true shadow work, especially when it's a solo mission. Now, I know these days it is becoming uh, sexier to enlist or hire a so-called, oh, let me not say so-called to throw no shade, but seriously, like the professionals. Where, in my humble opinion, I believe that if more and more of us took up self coaching as a family dynamic, that we wouldn't have to go and pay strangers to try to counsel us. And that's not saying that it hasn't worked, because it has. But it, me personally, instead of going weaving in and out of therapist offices, trying all kinds of medications and all that other kind of crazy shit that I went through, and I mean for damn near 20-year span, I'm hop, skipping, and jumping therapist office, and each and every time it's like I leave out of there with a prescription. The latter stretch of those days, I became rebellious about taking prescriptions out of their office. It's like, no, I don't want to be on anything. I was losing my motor skills, my sleep patterns were off, my eczema was flaring up, like it was just so much shit going on when I was on these damn antidepressants. So I And it wasn't even such a courageous act back then. It was like, you know what? I'm going cold turkey. I'm not even returning to the office for you to wean me off this shit. I'm about to get off of it. I won't be returning to your office or no other therapist's office for that matter. Like every single time I went in there, I got to tell some stranger about what's going on, when I really would have preferred to have been in my living room with the people I'm linked up with or connected with, and so that certain kind of healing could also take place. If I'm going to keep hashing out my childhood and unfolding and spilling all of this tenderness, like it at least need to go on to the ears that can relate. Now, I do not have any opposition to mediators, but I also feel like they should be in tune with the knowledge that's out here with regards to mediation. They ought to be already in tune to the living room that we be sitting in. Because I don't want to necessarily say they would need to be friends or family per se, but I'm just saying, like, somewhere in the grapevine, at least a girlfriend of a girlfriend of a girlfriend. Like, I'll even take that. The auntie of my daughter's girlfriend. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I will even. But come on, like, how is it that our in home therapy sessions are not through the roof? Like, how is it that the ratio of the strange and, like I say, I'm not throwing shade, but come on, like, every therapist that I've ever sat in, they were strangers to me. So that's what I mean when I say strange, you know. So, with that, I began studying and profiling myself. I began acting as my therapist. I began tapping into all of the things that I felt that all of my therapists either neglected to do or was too readily to do. I analyzed all of them. And it became amazing because I would go in there with the intention of analyzing them for content, for my ability to have something to take home, because it always felt lopsided. It's like I'm sitting in here telling you all of this, and I don't even know, like, nothing about you. Like, I know the professional profile that is for the public, the masses, but personally, and honestly, you only know what I tell you. You have no context to, and then it's like, hey, I'm gonna slap you with a prescription or two. Never did we like really truly hone in on my capabilities to be able to better understand what it was that I was going through. Because it's much deeper than just the details. And sometimes when you are on that type of quest, those that are listening to you unpack your shit, ah, does better when the ones listening have actually some type of emotional investment in the and I probably should disclose like now that this is not to say that all therapists suck because they don't, but there is a traditional trajectory surrounding or uh, upholding the conventional experience inside those realms. It's an amazing feat how the society that I live in is tapping into the antidepressants like they are. And we haven't taken it up on the family level to be investigating some of this shit just for the sake of having an in home counsel support system. And not that folks got to go study in psychology so that they can sit in the living room and be all pompous and shit. No, I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about the real family and the friends and family questmates. Those that has they say, because I fucks with you, I'm signing up for us to figure this shit out. And it ain't even about you being happy, but it is about you being whole. And whatever it is that I got to do, I'm going to contribute my time and attention to helping you investigate this shit. And so on the self level, the declaration of emotional independence belongs to oneself. And so in light of self, you are leading the investigation. Because I'll say it and say it again, that no one knows you better than you. And so it seems like such an oxymoron for me to have to sit in a therapist's office that I've never seen a day in my life, and I'm pretty sure she or he would never get invited to dinner. So why? Why? I'm a cheerleader for starting with why. And ever since I started asking myself the whys around me being in those types of realms, trying to heal from the inside out, I could never come up with any answers. So I'm posing it to you, especially if you are participating in such things. If it's working for you, fine, then your needs are being met. But if you're going into that therapist's office and the only thing that you have that could even partially be beneficial is a fucking prescription, and you still have no tools or techniques to build the awareness of how you're going to eventually not have to come up in that joint, especially if your therapist like don't turn into like somebody you can invite to dinner. If you walking up in that therapist's office and you can't imagine them coming to dinner, you better get your ass up out of there. There are language barriers to this thing. And that's the cold, raw truth. There are language barriers to this thing. There are love language barriers to this thing. So, I said all of that to say that the view of parenting, whether it was from my parents or from me, I remember when my daughter was about 6 months old, and I think I've said this before on a previous recording, and I sent up a prayer about wanting to be part of the curse breakers. Now, I was only 23 years old at the time, and I really didn't know what it was that I was asking for. And I definitely didn't know much about the generations of women before my mom. My mom and her mom didn't really see eye to eye, so we didn't see much of my mom's mom. Summers, but that was pretty much about it. My grandma became, well, she started sliding. Like her health started sliding before I was 8 or right around that time. So after that, um, she wasn't able to walk. And I can't remember, and I say all of that to say that I can't remember like my grandma coming to my mom's where my mom was living. And I say that to say that the presence of the grandparents, whether it's the kids going to the grandparents or the grandparents coming to the kids, I take a fondness to the grandmas that will stop past and handle the children inside of their own environment. Like that just, and especially the grandmas that are, are in blend with the household where she also can make herself at home. And that whether it's her daughter's house or her son's house with their kids, like whichever kid it is, that they make provisions for when mom pops over, she can have some of the things that's comfortable for her while she's here. And I noticed that in certain cultural denominations, it's a given. Like Granny is pretty much when she's here with us, she's home away from home. And there are some grannies that will come and be at the house, even though they had their own place and you know, but she meets the environment so that the kids don't be displaced and she blends inside of their world, their reality. Talking to Terry yesterday, I made mention about how each and every home, the threshold of each and every home enters into a portal. And inside that portal takes on the characteristics of whomever owns the home. So the homesteader becomes the portal's guardian or I don't really like to say gatekeeper, but they are the energy by which the home builds its character, either gets its warmth or strangeness or whatever have you. And those that dwell within that home take on the essence within that portal, which is just across the threshold of the home itself. In several fantastical stories that I've been tapping into over the last, I want to say about 6 months, it always talks about a magic that surrounds a home that has genuine, authentic love flowing through it. And that there are certain magical protective wards that will just, it'll grow like ivory. It'll naturally grow like ivory in an essence around the property that wards off random ass shit from happening amongst that dwelling. And it's nothing special that the homeowner or the people that live in there have to do. They don't have to be casting those spells and shit. Just out of the energetic love that permeates beyond the walls of the home, builds up this invisible structure of protection. And no, you won't have to call in the angels to come and protect, because the moment that the energy permeates the green chakra like essence, those that are in alignment to protect it, they come through. And the the folks that dwell inside, the energy makers that dwell within that homestead, without them having to do anything extra, it's already written in the unseen realm that extraterrestrial communication ebbs and flows between the, what can I call them? I can't just the celestial foot soldiers. I don't know what else to right now. Another term is not coming to mind, but I often say us as humans, especially with the low capacity of brain that we be functioning on, will probably lose it if we were able to gain sight of the unseen realm. Like, okay, so we we have sight, but it's still very limited, and I don't care how much of the mastering of the inner world you do, you still are limited in sight to the vast connectivity that goes on within, in and out of unseen realms on each and every dimension. Like, and yes, we can learn to cultivate certain connections to make them stronger, so that certain things come in more readily and more clearer, as well as discipline ourselves to make sure that we become sensitive to certain things, so when they come across the radar, we know what it is, or at least we have enough sense to know that something is coming through, and we log it in to decipher it later, but we are sensitized to these things. That I just rolled off is at reach and innately embedded, just needs to be activated in each and every meat suit that's running through this dimension. Honestly and truly, all it takes is the due diligence to strengthen the activations. Like, become aware that there are activations in the first place. And then as you are strengthening that, the uh, inevitable strength in that is that you can sense them, and that you've trained yourself to do certain things upon you sensing them, which then turns into you analyzing them, processing them, and transmuting them into some type of power that will ultimately enrich the way you exist while in said meat suit. So, this whole thing about parenting, and if we don't get a latch on the love that permeates through the homestead, then I'm not exactly sure what type of leading the 21st century is really going to do, um, when more than half of its constituents globally is angry, like fucking angry, pissed the fuck off. Like pissed the fuck off. So, um, I have a lot more that I could say, but I think I've said enough for now. Yeah, I think I'm gonna tap back in another day or two, seeing as that Venus will be entering Capricorn. And I know I'm going to have some things to say regarding the heart chakra and how it is that, uh, not even how it is, but maybe it is, what it is, that we can begin to ponder and bring life to the conversation. Because it's got to be had, like it has to be had. It has to be had. So maybe, um, yeah, just maybe, we will begin to um, not necessarily look at our kids as if we are their authority figures, and start hosting some investigations about the psychological portions of what dwells inside the homestead, and like be open to being a therapist and the, I don't know, therapy, I don't know. Switch the roles, like how I often say that it's magical when you are the teacher and the student simultaneously. Like, try that and see how it works. Like, because one thing I know for certain is that the kids see it. So they are able to do the 360 assessment if we would allow them. We too busy trying to be the authority. And it's like, okay, they came through me. But quite honestly, they are their own humans. They came here with a celestial agenda. And I should be investigating that as well and tapping into that and trying to figure out, like, not only my existential agenda, but theirs too. And I cannot impose in that manner no longer. Like, I have to pay attention to what's naturally gravitating and not like try to control the narrative so much that I go against their natural grains of being. And so we're gonna unpack that a little bit more as the days go on, um, because I will say, and I'm not exactly sure, like where I stand per se, on what it is that I'm about to say, or mainly, or maybe let me say this: I haven't really started taking a consensus on how other people feel about what I'm about to say. But I felt this way for so long. Even when my mom used to say it, it used to just, okay, so I'll tell you what my response was when my mom would say, I'm not your friend, I'm your mother. And my heart would always say, well, I really wish you was my friend. Like, you really could be the teacher and the student. Like, you really can be my mom and my friend. You really can. And I've taken such a fondness to the relationships that where I see that the mom she don't trip off being an authority figure. She trips off being a confidant and a support major and a primary cheerleader and a principal investigator. And so, like, And I'm not talking about the clingy moms who like just thrust themselves into their kids' lives. I ain't talking about them type of mamas either. Or should I say that type of parenting? I am talking about the I'll give you your space to make your decisions and, that kind of thing. Even from the little peepaws, like to give them the the opportunities to decide some things early on. I'll give you a more mainstream example. Michelle Obama, inside of her book Becoming, she speaks about the type of parents she had and the type of household she grew up in. And I'm not talking about the structure of the home. I'm talking about the vibes of the home. I'm talking about the unseen realms that attracted itself to the home just because of the way that the home was situated on the inside. And she spoke very freely about how she was as a child and how her parents did not try to stomp it out of her or demand that she act this way. Like they allowed her to blossom into her natural self. And of course, me reading that part of it, and it did not mean that her parents allowed her to be unruly or did not keep her in certain structure, but they allowed her to freely express herself. And they freely expressed themselves, and they didn't put these like weighty ass judgments on the content and context that was being exchanged with inside the house, whether there was disagreement or not, and there was. So I it's coming to mind right now that in the next pop up that I do with regards to principles, um, is mainly being sponsored by all of my mistakes and this last 90 days, the hard, deep down root of my perceptions and my mistakes and my shortcomings and overcomings, like the whole gamut. I have now honed in on the way I feel about some things. And what's going to be liberating about me speaking this and then posting it in the public domain strictly for the evolution of my Coach Mad Hatters. Honestly, I know with me posting in YouTube, there's no way I can determine who's going to be tapping into this. But I know who I am speaking to and why I am speaking to them. And it's a magical thing going on with those that identify with the Coach Mad Hattery phenomenon. I really think it's amongst the most unconventional therapeutic platform out there. And I'll always say, when the realms of psychology embrace the realms of the astro artisans and blend in and transmute something different, yeah, then we really gonna get into the golden age. Like it can be the golden epoch come 2020, and I really feel like that's what we stepping into. Like just just the lineup of the numerology feels golden. Good, bad, or indifferent, okay? Like, I'm not sure. Come on, none of us are sure. I don't care how much divination we try ourselves to tap into and how we hone it in. From day to day, we still are at the beck and call of the influences of the omniverse and how they want to do things. Yes, there is free will, but there's also fated paths as well. And everybody hop, skip, and jump, all depending on divine timing. So, I will be attempting to not like open book type of share, but I am going to just unpack some things and share some revelations with you, and some of the things that I've come um, to settle in on. And I am studying or learning or investigating, researching something every single day. And I don't take weekends off. Now, I do ebb and flow, okay? So I will have a consistent couple of days, and then I'll just kind of fuck it off for the next day. But there are also times when I am consistent 4 or 5 days of stretch, and then I'm fucking it off for 3 days. So it really is in tune to what's going on and the energy that I am able to tap into and how well I'm able to tap into it. And so I digress. I'm not exactly sure. I think that was just the end. That was the end of the message because I've completely drawn a blank now. So yeah, this was a good hangout. This was good, and we'll be back at it soon. Take care, and I wish you well.